helicopter and heading to the hospital. I was pretty pumped to be on a helicopter and whatnot, but then once I landed and then went into the surgery, sort of come down to, am I staying in Afghanistan or am I leaving? And there's always that part of you that's like, I think at the time I did a interview with ABC over there, and at the time I said, I didn't want to leave, I want to stay here with my mates and blah, blah, blah. But I won't lie to you, when I was laying on the hospital bed and the surgeon was cutting my arm open, there was a part of me that was like, what am I doing here? Do I want to be here? But it wasn't until I was gurneyed into the ward, and one of my best mates was laying next to me in the bed next to me. He was wounded the day before. He wasn't as lucky as I was. He lost his trigger finger, which meant he was heading home, and he was pretty devastated to be heading home. And I quickly realized how lucky I was to be able to stay and to be able to go back out. Yeah, so the feeling when I was like going through all that, it was sort of like I knew I wasn't gonna die. I was fine, but I needed to know the extent of my injuries. The piece of shrapnel that went through my forearm, it was just an entry and exit wound. However, the surgeon had to cut my arm open and clean out where the shrapnel had travelled. And once he cut down and had a look, you could see my tendons. It sort of looked like Terminator when I was moving my tendons. You could see them all moving up and down. And he told me to hold my arm like I was holding my rifle. So I had it like this, essentially, with my finger outside the trigger, like that. And he said all the tendons lined up, and you could see all the tendons, and the piece of shrapnel nicked at every tendon, just nicked every tendon. And he said if it was a 1 mil lower and got the tendons, and you'd be going home and you'd be going through years of rehabilitation and attaching the tendons back on and that. So I was quite lucky where it went in and out. And also I had shrapnel in my face. They did an x-ray on it. However, they missed, there was a Dutch x-ray dude, and he sort of put the camera in my face and did the x-ray and then gave the thumbs up and left. But it wasn't until it was about 4 or 5 months later, I started having nightmares about shrapnel in my face, and they'd have to remove my face, and this was the nightmare I was living in. And then I used a Garrett wand, which is a metal detector, and placed it up against my face, and it went off. And then I went to the medic and told him that I think the shrapnel was still in my face because the metal detector was going off. So then the medic that we had there, he had to cut into my face and pull 2 pieces of shrapnel out of my lip, just here. Yeah, but that was I still remember that Dutch guy. I'll never forget his face when he gave the thumbs up. But essentially, I stayed in Tarankow for 3 weeks, or 2.5 weeks. I had they left my wound. They stitched my face up. They left my wound, my arm open, and it was cleaned every day for a couple of days. And then I had about 14 or 15 stitches in my forearm, and I stayed in Tarankow, and it was about 2 weeks. And then after the 2 weeks, I flew back to the patrol base, and by then everyone had moved out of Platoon House Exchange and had moved back to Wally, the patrol base, Wally. So I got back to the patrol base and met up with everyone again, and I was straight back out on a operation the next day in a different valley, which was it was good. One time I thought of this when I was talking about when I was in hospital. So I came off the chopper into the emergency room that they have in Tamarkow, and they cut all my clothes and everything off me. They tried to cut my boots, and I stopped them because it's just protocol. They just cut everything off you, but they were brand new boots, and they were about to cut into them, so I stopped them and said, no, I'll just undo them. They're brand new. But I remember laying there in the hospital bed, in the emergency room, and they essentially come to you straight away with a phone, and you have to call your parents or your next of kin and tell them what happened. And it's a secure line, so you can tell them whatever you can give away, like some details about the event. So I remember calling the padre that we had at the time was a big Islander dude, and before, like I said, yeah, I'll call my dad. My parents are separated, and I said I'll call my dad, and I spoke to my dad, and that was pretty difficult, especially for him. He said it was pretty difficult because he felt quite helpless. And then I actually told my dad, can you ring mum and tell her? And he said, no bloody way, you're gonna have to do that. So I called mum and told her about it as well. And I didn't go into heaps of detail. I didn't want to worry them too much. I just told them the specifics. I was wounded, but I'm fine. I'm gonna stay. And I remember the padre. He was a big Islander rugby player, and I had the St. Christopher necklace on, laying in the hospital bed, and he goes, I love seeing you soldiers wear these. It's really inspiring. It's good. And then I laughed and said, yeah, a lot of good it did me, Padre. Look at where I am. And he gave me a huge backhand and slapped me across the face. And even the surgeon, the doctor, stood back and was like, oh, and then it shook me. It rocked me. And he said, you're lucky to be alive. I was like, yeah, that's true. And yeah, so that stuck with me. I was being a bit arrogant, saying, look at me. And he brought me back to earth and said, you're lucky to be alive, son. Yeah, so I thought that was quite funny. So like the worst situation that we were in was during a patrol. The engineer, Jacob Morland, and Darren Smith, who was a dog handler, and the dog Herbie were blown up, and they were all killed on our patrol. And that was the hardest day of the entire 9 months. Like only being 50, 60 meters away from two of your mates being killed, and there's nothing really you can do about it. But trying to make light of that situation, it was quite impossible to do. The only way that we got over it was to go straight back out on patrol the very next day. And even the CSM, it was the hardest. Like I said, it was the hardest day for us. But if we didn't go straight back out there and get back into it, then you start to build a fear, and you don't want to go back out. And I even felt that in Tamarkow when I was recovering from my injuries, and to the point where I was questioning whether I wanted to go back out. And it's that fear that builds when you're in a safe environment, and you don't want to go back out to a dangerous environment until we actually, so 0600 the very next day, I was straight back out on patrol, and it was difficult, but it was something you have to do. Yeah, so that's something that, it didn't matter. If it was a big event, that's essentially what you had to do, was get straight back out there. Don't let what happened to you become your identity. It's a slippery slope that I even fell into. I was a infantry soldier. I was a reconnaissance specialist, and then I wasn't. And then I was diagnosed with PTSD and depression and anxiety. So then that essentially became who I was. I was James Smith, Afghan vet with PTSD. And then it was talking to people, talking to family, friends, psychologists, and realizing that there's more to me than that small part of my life that was quite distressing and traumatic. However, it was a small part of my life. I've still got 33 years minimum of working life. I could have another 3 careers. So I had to stop identifying myself as James Smith, Afghan vet with PTSD. So I realized that I'm no longer an infantry soldier. I'm no longer a Afghan veteran. I'm no longer a reconnaissance specialist, but I'll always be a veteran. Try not to let it consume you, and become who you are. You're more than an illness or a diagnosis. The biggest thing I could say is if you're dealing with something and you're the only one that knows about it, it's very unlikely you're going to get help. And it's the hardest part of the entire journey, is putting your hand up and saying, I need help. But once you do that, once you overcome that, you're on the road to recovery already. You've already started your recovery. And I'll just say that, it does get harder. However, don't let it become your identity. You're something more than that. Oh, bloody hell. The engineers, man. Seriously, they it was like engineers against infantry. Like we're all brothers, like we're all patrolling next to each other, and the engineers saved our lives so many bloody times. But the pranks, man, if we went on patrol and the engineers didn't go on patrol, you knew something was going to happen. Like they were going to do something. But to the point where, like, if they went on patrol, we would go into their hab, which is their room. We would take all their furniture out and put it on the roof of the hab, essentially lay it out how it would be inside, just on the roof. So when they got back, they'd have a laugh, and they'd either sleep up there on the roof, or they'd have to get all their stuff and put it back in. But they were, being engineers, they were clever dudes. This one time they set up this tripwire in a room, and it was intricate. It went around the entire room, and as we walked in from patrol, we tripped the wire, and then containers of, I think it was or clothes washing powder and water mixed together onto our beds. So there's 10 beds in our rooms, and I don't know, they must have been planning it for ages, but they were clever dudes. And like, it's hard to be angry at someone when it's that intricate. It was like, we were quite impressed. There was some funny pranks that they'd do where people probably thought it was a bit dark, but on patrol, we'd always have engineers out the front, because they had the mine labs, they'd find the bombs. So they were always up the front. And we got intel that there was a IED in a gully, and so we went and searched these gullies, and so I'm in the front of the infantry, so there's engineers in front of me, and one of them goes through and searches the ravine, the gully, and he gets to the other side, and then he turns around and goes on the radio and says, yeah, Smithy, you're up, good luck, mate. And then he says to the rest of the platoon, "Wait, everyone turn your helmet cameras on. This is going to go off." And and after being wounded from a bomb, and I'm looking at him on the other side. I was like, I was laughing, but I was like, "You prick!" Like, I couldn't believe he did that, but it was quite funny. And it was funny, in that ravine, the IED was just down another engineer found it. It wasn't near me, but it was actually still down there, and so they were pretty good. But that was a bit of the humour that was circulating, and you sort of need humour like that to deal with stuff that was happening over there.
Cheeky bugger.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, when he did that. He's like, yeah, it's going to go off. 2 days before Anzac Day, my discharge date came through. And it was, I had about a bit over a year on medical leave, essentially, going to appointments on base, but also going to appointments in Newcastle and Singleton to psychologists and psychiatrists. And so I had quite a while to deal with a discharge coming. It wasn't a surprise or whatnot. So by the time it came, it was fine. It was sort of just, sign this, hand your ID back at the front gate, see you later, essentially. And it was like, okay, and I drove out, and that was it.
What year was this?
What year are we in?
2020.
I think 2019. So I think, April last year, April 2019, just before Anzac Day.
There you go.
A lot of close mates that I met throughout my entire career, from infantry to medic corps as well. Essentially, I only have a handful of close civilian friends that I went to school with back home that I still stay in contact with. The majority of my friendships are military personnel, and being like living in Singleton, I get a lot of close mates that get posted down here to train. IET soldiers, so they come down as instructors, which is quite good for me, and then I can catch up with them when they're down here, which is quite good. And we're all still very close. We might not talk for ages, and then when we do talk, it's like nothing. There was no gap. It was the friendships and bonds, I think, from the military is something that they're always there. It doesn't matter if you don't talk to the person for years. When you come into contact with them, it's like you're let off. Yeah, you're straight back to where you left off. It's a really good positive thing with military. I think it's something that you need, especially if you're not coping mentally. So I was awarded the typical medals for Afghanistan: the campaign medal, the AASM. I was awarded the Australian Defence Medal. That's just the medal you get for doing your 4 years in the military, and I was awarded the Infantry Combat Badge, which I think is a pretty important part of my set. I was awarded a Soldier's Medallion, and also the battle group that which was mentoring Task Force 1, was awarded the Meritorious Unit Citation. So we were all awarded this citation for our efforts in Afghanistan, which was pretty amazing to be recognised for such a hectic time in your life, and it's something we all hold quite dear. I think the MUC. Shit, I wouldn't have a clue where I would be if I didn't join the army. I was working on a pig farm. I liked it, but I don't know. Yes, that's a scary thought. The military shaped my life quite well, I think. I could be in a lot worse situation than I am, and the friendships and people you meet along the way, I wouldn't change a thing. I actually thought about becoming a pilot. I didn't know whether I wanted to fly helicopters or planes, and so I've done a couple of test flights in both, and yeah, it's just once I can get settled and actually get the time to maybe jump in and try and do that. That's probably not the best time to become a pilot though. There's quite a few just got the sack, which sucks. You'd think it'd be a secure job, so maybe I'll work back at the farm. No. Find your rhythm. Find what works for you. So I've done the therapy and the medication and the only thing that's really worked for me is working out, running, and I even now I'm off all medication. I took myself off all medication. It's been 8 months now, and I'll still have those down days, and I notice that it coincides with if I haven't worked out in a few days. I start to have those down days and periods where I'm not feeling too well mentally, and I'll go and do a workout, or I'll go and run 20 or 30 Ks, and then I'll realize, that's what it is. I need to maintain this fitness that I gained in the army. I need to maintain it, and that's how I've essentially gotten better. So I think and it could be anything. It doesn't need to be working out. You just need to find your niche, find what helps for you. It's not always medication. Sometimes it is medication. But find what's good for you and maintain it. It could be meditation, yoga. Just find it and continue doing it. Yeah.